Hey guys, it's Isaac again, Kind Fortress, and I wanted to tell you where I've gotten to with Panda Preserve. It's really, really neat how quickly this one kind of came together and just shows you, iterative play testing and just getting a game onto the table and watching it evolve is the best way. It's the quickest way to get a game to move forward. And so, um, well, why don't I show you what's happened? So let's go to the table. Okay, so once again, disembodied voice, but you can see my hands. All right, so when we last left our hero, we had a little bit of a different looking board. First of all, we had all those cubes out, and we also we have some newcomers. So first of all, there's this little fella. Now, this guy is a Panda Stack. It's a little panda on a larger panda on a tiny panda. And I want to thank my friend Josh Cheslow, a really dear friend of mine, who gave me this when I brought Panda Preserve over to his house and we tested it for a while. And he said, I know what I need to give you. This thing has been looking for a purpose for years and years and years. This is its purpose. So, in fairness, it's not one of the components included. I've still got our little panda meeple here, but I've just been getting such a kick out of it, and it's so thematic. Panda Preserve, and you have a whole family of pandas right here. So I've been using it. Okay, when we last played this game, we were removing cards based on the roll of the dice and using a grid system. So first thing that I did was I added these cards, and I'm going to bring one up here for a close-up. I added these numbered cards, and so just so that it's easy to tell when you roll your dice, so the panda, as we know, is a 6, so this is a 6-5. So what does that actually mean? So now I know, okay, here I've got my 6 here, and I've got my 5 here, so I'm on that card, or I've got my 5 and my 6 here. Now, the other thing to notice about these cards, and it's easier to see with like the 3-4, is that one is right side. Actually, the 3-4 is a terrible choice. What am I saying? Probably the 1-6 is a good one, right? So you see that one of these, the 6 is right side up, and the 1 is upside down, and that's very important because it's now a 2-player game. We've gone away from the 4-player concept, so it's a 2-player game, and you use the numbers that look right side up to you. So if I'm standing here, I'm using these numbers, but from the perspective of the camera, you guys are using these numbers, and of course these numbers. Okay. There's another thing that's going on here, which you may notice from your perspective, and it's actually super, super important for how the game develops, which is this whole grid idea was really, I was trying to borrow from Backgammon and from Settlers of Catan because of that lovely bell curve that you get when you roll 2d6. So your 7s are very common, and then 6s and 8s, and then 5 and 9, and 2 and 12 and 3 and 11 are pretty uncommon. And I wanted to use that spatially. I feel like there's a bunch of games that are using that, but Backgammon has always been one of my favorite games, and it's a game that uses that spatially, and I wanted to bring that into 2 dimensions. Now, as you know, in this game, as the panda moves and eats things, it's going to take cards off the board. But what I did was I cleverly arranged, and I hope it's clever, but I arranged the numbers so that from both players' perspectives, the cards, there are some cards that are extremely unlikely to be rolled and some cards that are very common. So if you look, this row of cards, these are all 7s. This is the 1-6, this is the 2-5, 3-4, 4-3, 5-2, 6-1. Right? So the 7s cut right down the line, which means that the 6s and the 8s will be parallel to it, and then the 5s and the 9s and so on. And what that does is, it wasn't like this before, and I had to create these key cards in order to create that effect. The effect that creates is that these middle numbers are very likely to get rolled, which means they're very likely to come off the board, which means that you wind up with the panda on either this corner of the board wandering around here because all of this stuff is missing, or on this corner of the board because the other side is missing. So that's really neat, and it works a lot better than the more chaotic way that cards were coming off the board, where one player had their sevens on this cross and the other player had their sevens on that cross. So this is a nice evolution and a nice way to use the numbers. However, I had two other challenges with the previous iteration. One was that I had 7 different colors, I think, or 5 different colors, I forget, of bamboo, of those cubes. And that was way too many. And what ended up happening was that the scoring was off, it was hard to collect sets, you couldn't get enough cards of the same type. And so I rethought that, and I said, well, let me bring it way down. And this is a lesson that I was taught that Reiner Knizia talks about. And he says, when you're trying to test your game and you're trying to balance it, don't move things up by 1 or 2 or 3. Double them or halve them. And so since I had so many, I decided to go with very few. And so I now only have 3 types of bamboo. I've got the yellow, the brown, and the green. And that seems to work a lot better. Now there's 12 of each. The other thing is I changed the scoring up a little, and some of this is having the theme come into focus a little bit better. So the idea here is that you're trying to create a panda preserve. You have this whole kind of wilderness of bamboo, but the problem is that not all of this wilderness can be reserved for the panda. The panda is actually going to wind up on just 1 card. But as a conservationist, as a naturalist, as the zookeeper, you want to make sure that the pandas have enough food. And you want to make sure it's the food that they like to eat. So the scoring system now is different. The panda is going to collect whichever bamboo he walks on, right? So whenever the panda lands somewhere, he eats the bamboo from the place that he started, and then on his next turn when he moves off, he's going to eat the bamboo that he was on. And so the panda is going to wind up with a few different colors of bamboo in his belly. And you and your opponent are also going to wind up with different colors. So let's say that the panda wound up with a green, a yellow, and I have here a green, 2 yellows, and 3 browns. What this will mean is that every green that the players have collected will be worth 1 point, the yellows will be worth 2 points, and the browns will be worth 3 points. So now we have sort of a strategy emerging where you're trying to collect the same bamboo that the panda is eating, which is of course difficult because he's eating them, and so it's hard to get so many of those. But that's roughly what you're trying to do. You're trying to score the bamboo that the panda loves the most, and it's nice. It's thematic. It sort of makes sense. Like, oh, the panda really likes green bamboo, so any green that I've gathered is going to be worth more. So that was really nice, and that kind of came together pretty well. But I had another challenge. The other challenge that I had was that the game was ending kind of quickly. Now, this was certainly true with 4 players because every turn the player would take a card, and the panda would take a card. And so that was 2 cards per turn, and in 4 players, that means in a single round, 8 cards are going out. There's only 36 cards in the game, and the game ends well before they're all taken, right? The game ends when the panda is on a disconnected card, on a card that is not connected to any other. So the game was ending much too quickly. You'd have, 3 turns, and that was pretty unsatisfying. So I thought, well, how can we slow this down? It also was, the game worked, but it was symptomatic of a game that had a core mechanism, but not necessarily anything else, right? And sometimes this happens, or this has been happening to me as I've been building games from simple to complex. I had started off as a designer building very complicated games and then trying to trim them down to something manageable and publishable and so forth. And I really, in the last year or so, I challenged myself to try and learn how to design from the other direction. And this is the kind of game that you wind up making when you design from the other direction. And very often your challenge is it really there? Is there really enough here, or is this just a neat mechanism that needs a little bit more? And I certainly felt like this was a neat mechanism. The rolling dice and the coordinate system was cool, and once the scoring and the set collection rounded into shape, I thought, okay, that's great. Um, but I saw this guy, and it's funny. I saw this guy. Remember this guy? So what's so funny about it is that this is a mouse from Mice and Mystics, right? I'm going to show them to you again, and maybe I'll just keep them out for you guys right here so that we can talk about it for a while. Okay, so this is a mouse from Mice and Mystics. This is Lily, and the thing about this mouse is that I know from having received other Panda designer toolkits that this is not the only mouse that can be in your designer toolkit, and some of you may have received a different mouse. You may have received Imaginos, or I forget the name of the prince, or then there's the guy with the big hammer. But I happened to get this Archer, and immediately my thoughts are, well, that's a hunter, right? That's a poacher. And so I started experimenting, and here's what I've come up with, and this has worked really well to solve a few different problems. So what the Poacher now does is this. Here's how the game works. You're going to roll your dice. So I roll my dice. I've gotten a 6-4. I keep getting that Panda as my 6, but I got a 6-4 here. So a 6-4 means that I select, here's my 6 and here's my 4, so I'm just going to tap that a little so that I remember, and this is the 4 and this is the 6. So these are the two cards I can choose from. Now they both happen to be yellow, so at least as a first turn there's not much difference between them, so I'll go ahead and take this one, and I'll put that one back. Now I can move my Panda 2 spaces. 6 minus 4 gives me 2. Or I can move my Poacher 2 spaces. Now I want to move my Panda 2 spaces. But here's the thing. I can't end with my Panda in the same row or the same column as the Hunter, because the Hunter can shoot. So I can't move to this yellow square that I might have wanted to go to because the Hunter's there. Alright, so I'm going to move over to here, and I'll be able to, and so this green goes into the stomach of the Panda, and now the other player plays and has a 2-4. Now the other player is using this 2 and this 4, right? So, I hope I haven't messed that up. But, so they're looking at this brown card, I think I'm good, and this 4 and this 2, so they've got 2 browns as well. And so that's fine. They're going to go ahead and take this one. But now, rather than moving the Panda and letting the Panda eat that yellow, which they don't want to be eaten because their opponent has the yellow bamboo, let me just put these here so that we got them all together. They don't want the Panda to eat this yellow bamboo. It's worth points to the other players. So they're going to move the Hunter, and they're allowed to move the Hunter just as though it was the Panda. So 4 minus 2 is 2. You can now move either the Hunter or the Panda. And they're going to go ahead and go 1, 2. Now, the truth is, because the Hunter is a Hunter, the Hunter can go 1, 2 and live in the spaces that the Panda has already deforested, has already eaten the bamboo from. The Hunter doesn't mind. The Panda won't go there because there's nothing to eat. But the Hunter can move there. And so now this Hunter is shooting at the Panda. What's that going to mean? It's going to mean that on the next turn, well, I got a 5-5 and I want to come to the doubles rule later. So let's say I got a 5-2. Well, that's a little better. I rolled a 5-2. So a 5-2 means here's my 2 and here's my 5, so that's one possibility, and here's my 2 and here's my 5, that's another possibility. I'm going to take the green because the Panda's already eaten a green, so it's worth a point. But now I can move the Panda off, right? I can move up to 3 spaces. 5 minus 2 is 3. But the Panda's not going to eat this yellow bamboo. Why? Conceptually, the idea is that the Hunter is now hunting the Panda, and so the Panda can't hang out and eat. The Panda's got to keep moving, or else the Poacher is going to shoot it. So that's really neat thematically. You really feel like the Poacher is chasing the Panda, and you also now have a tool that does a few things. First of all, it gives opponents a handle, a lever, for interfering with one another. And the second thing that it does is it reduces the number of cards that come off the board each turn, right? Because when I move the panda and he doesn't eat, so that's one more card that stayed on the table. So that's really great. That works out terrifically. There's also rules now for doubles. So this is one of those things that, again, when you do dice games, these things come up. Oh, what are you going to do about doubles, right? That's a common issue. And sometimes you think about it early and you have like your rules for, oh, I know definitely what I'm going to do with doubles. Doubles are going to do this. They're going to explode. They're going to... and in a game like this, I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with doubles, and I thought, well, let's see what happens. So doubles are interesting in this game. These are double fours I'm showing you right here. I hope I'm showing them to you. Because only one card on the grid is a double four. Now, each player has their own double four, so my double four is here and your double four is here. That's okay. But once that double four is gone, if I roll it again, there's no card for me to take. Also, 4 minus 4 is 0, so I can't move the panda. So I thought to myself, all right, well, I don't mind not being able to move the panda, but I don't want to not be able to move anything and also possibly not be able to take a card, right? If the board looked like this and I rolled a 4-4, there's no card here, and then I can't move anyone, and that's just, that's not a very satisfying experience. So what I decided was that, yes, doubles would get you that card, and if that card's not there, well, there's other times you roll things and the card's not there, and no, you can't move the panda, but you can move the hunter up to the number of spaces of the value of the double. So if you roll a 4-4, you can move the hunter up to 4 spaces. And that's kind of neat, because it really gives that hunter a lot of opportunity to maneuver. It really lets you put him exactly where you want to. So that's how doubles came about. The other thing that came about in playtesting is, let's say you roll exactly the number that the panda is on, right? So from your perspective, let's say you rolled a 5-3. So now you rolled the panda's card. So the rule is, you may take the card, and in some cases you may have to. If the 3-5 is gone, then you'd have to take the card. So you do take the card, but then you must move the panda. You may not move the hunter, because the panda has nothing here, right? The panda has no more food here. So you have to move the panda. And this is a really neat thing when it happens, because sometimes you really don't want the panda to eat that. You'd be much happier having it in your hand than having the panda eat it. So it's kind of cool that it works out that way, and sometimes the other way. So anyway, that's pretty much how the game has rounded into shape. I went ahead and printed up nice cards. So I was using card backs for different sleeves. So I had 3 different colored sleeves, and that's what I was using to test the game after I got away from the cubes. And I said, well, I don't really need the cubes if I just sleeve the cards. That'll work really well. So I did that for a while, and when I was happy enough with it that I thought, I'm probably going to play test this quite a bit with this setup, and I'm going to be at Unpub this weekend, and I'm certainly going to bring this with me. So I wanted it to pop a little bit more. I wanted it to look a little bit more attractive so that I can wrangle more playtesters. And I think that between this guy and my mouse and this more colorful grid, I'll have a shot at drawing some more eyeballs. I'm also trying to test out colors that are colorblind friendly, so I have a green, but I don't have any red. I have no blues. I used a brown that I think is pretty color separated from both the yellow and the green. So that's something I'll be looking for feedback on as well. And I created this grid, and I created actually a second set to line up on either end. I think it's more confusing that way, actually, so I decided to go with this, but using the diagonal cards and the flipped over number. All of these were iterations towards trying to make the game more ergonomic, easier to see, easier to understand. I don't know if it's done, but it's a lot of fun this way, and I need to now hear feedback from players to find out what's not fun. I need to hear the feedback and see how people play with it to decide what else needs to happen to it. Anyway, this is Panda Preserve. Thank you all for checking out vlog number 2. Thank you again to J.R. Honeycutt, to the Dallas-Fort Worth Nerd Night crew, and to all the other designers. And I look forward to seeing some of you at least at Unpub, and let's play each other's games. So thanks for listening again, and good night.